Good evening. My name is Joe Hyde. I'm the publisher of San Angelo Live. Thank you for coming out to our forum tonight. Tonight is our first of a series of live talks, and if this works, then we'll do more. I have some other people from like Austin and Houston and San Antonio lined up to get out here. But tonight we're going to talk about the origins of the San Angelo trash controversy, and I have my guest here today, Rick Froman, who is the Director of Sales for Texas Disposal Systems. And if you're not familiar with TDS is what we call them, they are the non-incumbent trash hauler for this area. They're also the incumbent trash collector for Angelo State University and for the city of Mertzon, and there's some other communities surrounding San Angelo where you operate in. But your base is in Creedmoor, Texas, which is southeast of Austin. Is that correct? So Rick, why don't you tell me a little bit about your experience in the trash business and dealing with municipal governments?
Well, first of all, thank you, Joe, and thank everybody for coming tonight. We didn't know that trash was such a hot political topic, but thank you for coming and expressing an interest, and we'd be happy to share information. I've been in the trash business about 35 years. I didn't think I wanted to get into it. That wasn't my dream in life, but it's actually a lot of fun, and I've done a lot of different things in it. But I've been with Texas Disposal Systems for going on 11 years, and we work with about 115 communities across central Texas. We have contracts with about 35 cities, and the rest are HOAs and MUDs. We also do regular commercial business, and we do construction business. We go from the heart of our business is in Austin. We go north of Austin to Georgetown, a little bit north of there, if you know where Georgetown is, and we go south to San Antonio. We go east almost to Houston, to Katy and West Houston, and then we do some work in San Angelo. We have an office here in San Angelo. We have an office in Alpine. So we're just in Texas. We're a regional company. We're not we're a privately held local company with two brothers that were born in San Angelo.
And Rick, how large is Texas Disposal Systems? How many? Is there volume in sales or number of employees? You can give us a...
Sure, we have about 750 employees that run in that whole area. So we're not a small company by any means. We're growing, and we have employees all throughout the area. We have multiple companies. We are in the trash business. We also are in the recycling business. We're also in the landfill business. We're also in the composting business. So at our facility in Austin, we have about 2,500 acres. We're the only company in Central Texas that has recycling, landfill, composting. We've got a concrete crusher that we just bought. We're applying for TCQ permit, and we do all those services. So we're the only ones that have actually invested in facilities that support those. It's easy to have just trucks and drivers and containers, but we all know everything just doesn't disappear. It has to go somewhere. And so we have decided to fully integrate. If you come visit us, and we have tours all the time, we have all this acreage because we have a buffer zone around the landfill, and we have over 100 species of exotic animals. We have about 1,500 head. You'll see rhinos and giraffes, zebras running wild, all kind of deer and antelope, all kind of exotic animals, and there's nothing else really like it anywhere in the world that we know of. We've never seen anything. We have a totally different model, but it shows that if you really do the landfill right, you can live in harmony with nature. So our employees get really stoked about that, and we're excited about it because it's a really different type of company.
San Angelo, and the people watching on the video are going to want to know a little bit about the trash contract. And we talked about this was going to be about the origins of the trash controversy, which in my mind started when I started covering this as a journalist in November 2013. And at that time, I didn't know much about it, but I looked into the landfill here. And there are some issues with the landfill, that the number of years left on the landfill, it was almost reaching a crisis, and they were worried about if we didn't start recycling or doing something to divert trash from our landfill here, San Angelo would be left without one. So that in turn started the conversations at City Council concerning who's going to manage the landfill? Are we going to put it out for RFP? In fact, originally they weren't even going to put this out for RFP.
Oh, that's absolutely correct.
So, if I remember that correctly. So, give me the perspective now of the bidding process. Now, there were 7 companies, I think, that came out and investigated San Angelo, but only two bid to take care of the landfill and also to pick up the commercial and residential trash. So give me some perspective on looking at the RFP, looking at the competition, leading up to that.
Well, certainly will. Let me back up to one of the things you said. So one of the things that we looked at in discussing this is we found that the landfill and trash contract had never been bid out in the history of the city that we could tell. It went back 37 years. It's a massive contract because the landfill is a regional facility that doesn't just serve San Angelo, but I think Republic said there were 30-some cities that they had that they bring through the San Angelo landfill. So we met with as many council people as would meet with us, brought the contract, asked them had they read the contract, did they know how much money the landfill was bringing in, did they know what the expenses were, did they know what the environmental liability was.
So what you're telling me is the landfill itself is an asset. It's not something that we need to necessarily try to get rid of, or it's an asset. We can make money off of it.
You can if you do it right, and it's a huge asset. You can also lose money if you're not managing it properly. And we asked questions of the staff, we asked questions of the council. How much money is in closure, post-closure fund? How much do you recommend is there? We found at the time they actually had negative $2 million closure, post-closure fund balance according to the staff.
So this closure, post-closure fund balance, that's something mandated by the state, correct?
Well, what it means is that when the landfill's open, there's money coming in. When the landfill closes, there's no more money coming in. But there are requirements for many years after the landfill closes by TCEQ that if something goes wrong, you have the full liability. So you have to have money, you have to set money aside while the money's coming in and put it aside so that you have, it's your money. If nothing ever goes wrong, then you take the money back. But you have that liability and you have to prepare for future liability. So we had these discussions with all the council members and the staff, and they were voted by one vote, if I remember right, to go out for bid after never being out for bid.
So of the 7 city council members, you won 4-3, or maybe it was 5-2.
I think it was 4-2 because I think one person was out. But
okay, so to go out to bid, and if they had not done that, we wouldn't even have a bid, right? So there's no legal requirement for the city.
Not at all. There's no legal requirement at all. But when a contract is that old, and you have an asset that's that valuable, we certainly felt, whether you gave the business to us or someone else, that that's in the best interest of the city to try to maximize the value of your asset and get the most possible gain.
Okay, now we're continuing forward. I asked these questions in long succession, but there were 6-7 companies that came in low, only 2 bid. What's your opinion of why that is?
Well, I was at the pre-bid meeting. It was a mandatory pre-bid meeting. I don't remember if all 7 came. I know the mayor has stated publicly that 7 packets were sent out. It's very interesting, and when you look at the RFP requirements, it says that whoever, and I have a bunch of data here, sheets, it's all on our website. It's over 200 documents on our website. But I can hand it out to anyone that's interested. But it'll show you that in the RFP it says the successful bidder will accept all past, present, and future liability of the landfill. Well, if you think about it, that's really a complete misnomer, because if someone's been operating that facility for 37 years, there's absolutely no way, I don't care what the city ordinance or what the city contract says, that you could, if someone else got the contract, that you could forcibly take that liability from one entity for what they've done in the past and give it to someone else. It doesn't work that way. If they found that 10 years ago, and this is just a hypothetical, but if they found 10 years ago that the walls of the landfill weren't constructed right and there was a puncture now, and they found out there was something wrong with the way it was put in, the people who managed it before can't say, oh, we don't have any liability because there's a new contract with a new contractor who has accepted all the liability. So, very, very unusual. I've never seen anything like it. And the people that I talked with at the pre-bid said, yeah, that doesn't even make any sense. In addition to that, it said that the road to the landfill, if you've ever been to the landfill, the road that you drive on the landfill, the gatehouse, the scale, and everything associated with that is not owned by the city. It's owned by Republic. And so if another company got the contract, they would not be able to use the road. They have to find another entrance, cut another road, put in another scale house. And several people that I talked to, bidders, were just like, yeah, this makes no sense. But you don't know what your competitors are going to do. A lot of times they're going to say things and that aren't necessarily true. But when it came time to turn the bid in, no one else bid. And I don't believe in it for any reason. It's because they weren't interested in picking up the city of San Angelo's trash.
So why did, if you have all these other companies who won't bid, why did Texas Disposal decide to go ahead and bid on this thing that looks like the RFP process was, they built a contract or request for proposal tailor-made for Republic Services, and it was impossible for you to make any money with it, so why bid?
Well, when the RFP specifically looks like it's completely made for Republic or the incumbent, because that's why nobody else bid. So we did bid on it, but we didn't bid exactly the way the RFP said. We said, we're not taking any liability for the past. There's no way we can do that. And we wouldn't, no reasonable business would take liability for something that you have totally no idea who operated it, how long they operated, what they did. But we also found some other things in the process. The staff had told us that there was waste that was dumped outside the permit boundary on unlined area of the landfill.
When you say the staff told you, is that the city staff?
Yeah.
The city staff told you that trash was being dumped outside of the boundary?
It wasn't being dumped, but there was some that had been dumped. It wasn't an ongoing basis, but they had located something that hadn't been dumped in the proper place.
Was it a large volume they were saying, or?
I don't remember.
Okay.
But it hadn't been rectified. Well, that's a problem. When we looked at things like the compaction ratio, it didn't add up. It wasn't what would be an industry standard.
Can you explain to everyone what a compaction ratio is?
When you put trash in the ground and you compact it, you want a landfill, you have airspace. You dig a hole, and the life of the landfill is until that hole fills up. So the more compaction that you have, the longer that asset will last. If you don't have good compaction, it will last not as long. And so you have to turn a report every year to TCQ to say what your compaction ratio is, and based on that, the amount of tons that you get in, how long you think your landfill is going to last. So those things are very important. So we've had some concerns about that. There was a negative amount of soil that didn't look like it was going to take, we just daily cover at the end of every day. Didn't look like it was going to last the rest of the landfill.
So when you say the soil would last, that would mean that the existing soil that was dug out of the holes, was it managed correctly, or?
That's what it appeared to us. We can't tell you for sure, but when we look at the data, we're looking at these things that are red flags.
So it's washing away the rainstorms, or being used, could be tucked off, or whatever. There wasn't the same amount of volume.
There's many things that could happen, but it didn't. It was a red flag to us. Also, we had taken over a city, Alpine, prior to that, who had Republic servicing their landfill. It was a much, much smaller landfill. But there were issues that arose. They hired a third-party engineer. We have their engineering report on our website that said, hey, there were some serious problems. And we found out in the bidding process that Republic had systematically overcharged every commercial business. Didn't have anything to do with the landfill, just had business practice we think it was 14 years.
You're talking about in Alpine or in San Angelo?
No, in San Angelo, I'm sorry.
Okay.
So when we put all of that together, and our response was about 200 pages long.
And you're talking about the RFP response.
I'm sorry, thank you.
All right.
And the RFP response, it was about 200 pages long, but we put an executive summary, and on page 2, you didn't have to read very far, we said because of all of these factors, we're not going to accept any liability going forward for this facility because we don't know what we're getting into. So we're not going to accept liability, can't accept liability in the past, but we have a lot of questions. We see some things that don't add up, and so that makes us wonder what else are you going to find out when you get in there. So we can't put the good name of our company on that to accept liability. So we gave other options. One option was we take leased property from the city across the street, construct a completely new landfill at our expense to permit it, to construct it.
So the landfill business is so good that TDS is willing to build a new landfill to be able to be the regional provider for trash reception.
We were willing to build a regional facility, and we were willing to start over. We won the SWANA Award, Solid Waste Association of North America Award for Best Landfill in North America, not from a profitability standpoint.
What I'm getting at is there's so much money in the tonnage fees, I guess, from other entities for landfill that you can actually make a lot of money with.
You should be able to, because it's an investment. There's a huge capital investment up front, and you have to be able to recoup that investment,
so your first
and make money.
Your first proposal, or your first option you gave in your RFP was to build a whole new landfill and then lease it to the city?
No, run it to the city, run it for the city, and accept 100% of the liability.
Well, who was going to pay to build the landfill?
TDS.
Y'all were going to pay to build the landfill. Okay. What was your second option?
Was to keep running the existing facility on a cost-plus basis and let the city maintain the liability that they already have.
Okay, and the third option? Did you have a third option?
It was a hybrid of the two.
Well, the mayor makes a big deal. He defends the public contract. He makes a big deal out of two things. First of all, he says that TDS will not accept any liability whatsoever. And number two is they wanted to gouge the city in a cost-plus contract. And he kind of asked, who does a cost-plus contract we have no control over? Would it, explain to me how a cost-plus contract works, and do you have one in operation somewhere else?
Well, there's cost-plus contracts all over the place. We don't have one in another city at this point in time. We're in negotiations with several, but there's so many ways that you can protect yourself in a cost-plus contract. The whole point is that the costs are open book, they're revealed so that everybody can see what the cost is. So to your point about, boy, there must be a whole lot of money, well, you can see exactly what all the costs are. The city can help make decisions on, oh, we want to do this, or we don't want to do this, because you see the cost. You can put caps, you can put targets. There's lots of ways to have something that works really well for everyone involved. I think the key to what you're saying, and what I wanted to say was, we never had any discussions with the mayor, the council, the evaluation committee, or anyone. Because the thing that surprised me the most, if I put in page 2, if we put, there's some problems that you have with your landfill, and here's what they are, I would think that someone who has a fiduciary responsibility for that, for the city's, one of their biggest assets, would want to ask, hey, I'm not a Subtitle D expert, I'm not an environmental attorney, I'm not someone that understands all the laws for TCEQ. Well, let's bring those people and interview them, and let's ask them what the questions are, and let's get all that information. But there was not one question from one city council member, from one city staff member, or the evaluation committee.
The problem that's been expressed to me, and I might be paraphrasing this a little bit too much for the person, I won't say the source, but the problem was, and I've been involved in government RFPs, they say you didn't follow the guidelines, you didn't follow the instructions on the RFP.
Well, we gave options. We were not going to follow the instruction, which was specifically lined up to only give it to the company that was already there, because the rules were written, you have to accept the liability that you can't accept, and there were enough red flags, we weren't going to accept liability going forward. So in that regard, we said, no, we're not going to do that, but here's 3 other options.
And the RFP, this RFP process occurred January, February of 2014. That's kind of when everything was going on. And I guess they were due sometime in March, maybe mid-March is when they came in. Were you surprised on April 1st, I think that's the date that they went to city council, were you
April
surprised that they were going to go ahead and choose Republic?
Well, we participate in lots of RFPs with lots of cities. And the standard practice is, let's say that there were 7 that responded. They'll go through and they'll wean it down to 2 or 3 or 4 and bring them in and do an interview, fly out to their facilities, see what they're, drive out, see how they operate, check the references, have interviews, ask questions about, you didn't really respond the way we were hoping to on this RFP, but you gave us some other options, can you explain it? So we assumed, incorrectly, but we assumed if there was only 2 respondents to one of the largest contracts you have in the entire city, that we think on our website we classify as about a $500 million contract, that you would bring both of them in.
Let's sidebar that for a second. Let's quantify the value of this contract, because that's been like a big point of contention with the city. I came out, or San Angelo Live came out and reported that it was a $400 million contract, I think, early on. And we were told to retract it and send out another email to our audience apologizing for the error. When it finally came out, I believe that Bob Gregory said it was worth $260 million over 10 years with a very easy renewal process. So it's actually probably going to be a 20-year contract worth $520 million. So $520 million over 20 years. And that's your numbers, right?
Yeah, and I'm thinking on the 20, on our website we have a 20-year calculation. There are some things that are pretty easy to calculate, how many homes are in San Angelo, an average growth rate that the Chamber of Commerce provides, but bear in mind there's lots of volume that comes into the landfill that's outside the city. There's
right, so if Junction sends their trash here, you're making, well, I guess it's $40 per ton or whatever the tonnage fee is now. And that's a lot of money, right?
Well, we're not making it,
well,
but the city and the public, yes, absolutely. It's a revenue stream for the asset that you were talking about.
What's your I guess, impression of the RFP review process? I think it took a weekend, right? They probably, they looked to me, from looking from the outside, I wasn't inside, but it looked to me like they took less than a day to look at the RFPs.
It was on the weekend, and we were shocked. We thought we were going to get a call back and say, here, we're setting up interviews. We have a list of questions. Typically, here's a list of 10 questions to be prepared to ask. We'll have some other questions. Bring this many people. We're going to have 2 hours for each company, and we'll go through. And none of that happened. We just received a letter that said, we're not interested. Now, one of the things that's on our website, one of the pieces of information, I have it with me tonight, that I think is interesting to me, related to the review process, is there were a number of people, not the whole council reviewed it. They had
Who was on the review? Who reviewed the RFP responses?
I don't have the list for you. There were several.
Councilman Winky Wardlaw.
He was.
Councilwoman Charlotte Farmer.
She was on the committee. Ricky Dixon, Shane Kelton.
Was City Manager Daniel Valenzuela?
No,
he wasn't. Okay.
I believe so. There were several. We can get you the information, but it was people that volunteered to be on the committee, and that's standard practice, and that's normal. I have, because we put in public information requests for all the scoring sheets, and I have Charlotte Farmer's scoring sheets with me that I can show you tonight. So there were 5 different categories: financial impact, operation experience and qualifications, financial stability, adherence to the specification, and additional beneficial criteria submitted.
Show the piece of paper. It's got a whole lot of lines to write down notes.
We have copies. You can look at this now. I didn't bring everyone's. They're all on our website. But I brought Miss Councilman Farmer's just because it was the most interesting. So there was 2 parts. There was a landfill evaluation and there was a hauling evaluation, because in the RFP it said that they could be split, but they would most likely like to keep them together. So on the landfill piece, she gave 100% of the score of all 5 categories to Republic, so they received 100%.
And what did TDS do?
Well, on the next page. So on TDS, there's 5 categories, and we got a 0 in each one of the 5 categories. So it was 100 to 0. It says on the score sheet, each committee member must provide written justification for any score less than the maximum points that could be awarded. So there would be 5 categories. So if you judged it less than the maximum, there should be 5 different reasons. She listed one that said TDS made statements in this letter stating that San Angelo would be best to keep the landfill. So then there's another score sheet for hauling for waste collection. And so there's 5 categories there, a total of 100. Republic received 100% from Ms. Farmer on all 5 categories. And TDS for hauling.
And when you say hauling, that's the residential pickup?
Residential and commercial.
Okay.
Not the landfill, not related to landfill liability, not any of those things. Received 0 on all 5 categories. With one comment that said did not provide actual financial information, only letter of credit. And once again, it requires that you should have a comment for each one of 5. So in essence, her evaluation was 200 to 0.
And when she says provided letter of credit but not financial information, what she's saying is Republic gave they're a publicly traded company. They give her 10Q or whatever you file with the FEC, and you guys are privately. Why do you give them something? Give them a balance sheet and a P&L.
We absolutely do. And because of the public information laws, we never give our financials out to anyone who is subject to public information.
So what you're saying is one of your competitors or someone who wanted to find out the inside scoop on Texas disposal could do a Freedom of Information Act request for the RFP response of yours and have all your financials.
And the city could say they want to protect it, but they can't. But in our proposal, we had a letter that said, just because we're not going to give them to you, that doesn't mean we're not going to share. Obviously, you want to be able to evaluate the strength of the company. We will come and show you our financials. So to my point, if we had an interview, we could have arranged to have the financials there. They could have evaluated them and looked at them. We're trying to not give them, but because of the public information, we never just give them to a city. But it's very interesting that, to your point, over a weekend, one evaluator, even though we have the best landfill in North America, we responded to everything in the hauling contract exactly the way it was. I've seen RFP responses many, many times. Never seen 100 to 0. It might be 100 to 90, 100 to 80. You can put reasons why. But to give us no points in 10 categories is very, I'll say very unusual.
So your feelings are hurt. TDS's feelings are hurt. And that's why you've been raising all this ruckus here. I mean, it's 2 years since this happened. And a lot of people are saying, why didn't Texas Disposal go away? I mean, you lost the deal. That's what they told Ryan Beard at the July Trash Forum. He said, we don't want to hear from you anymore. So why are you still here?
That's a great question. Well, we're here because we actually have a business inside the city limits of San Angelo that we pay taxes on. We have a permit to haul to the San Angelo landfill. We have customers, Angelo State University. We have elementary schools that we do recycling in. We have temporary roll-off boxes that we do construction work inside the city. We have customers outside the city whose trash is hauled to the San Angelo landfill. We have cities like Mertzon, Sterling City outside the city who we haul to the San Angelo landfill. So we're here because we're not going anywhere. We're building an ongoing business and we're planning to be here. Now, we're big boys. It doesn't matter. Our feelings are not hurt. But the thing that's very unusual about this is that there's a no lobbying clause in this RFP.
Let's go ahead and back up and let's talk about that, because after the RFPs were evaluated by this committee, right? Then you went into negotiation. They chose Republic, and then they said, oh, we're going to negotiate now. So Republic already gave their bid, then they kicked the other guy out, and they said, let's renegotiate the deal. Is that kind of how it worked?
Well, it's not renegotiate, it's negotiate a contract based on the RFP. But all of the questions that I mentioned to you about, hey, there's problems at the landfill, we didn't have this information on how to score it at the time. But the other things that we were concerned about, we couldn't go talk to anybody about because that would automatically disqualify us. So we kind of had a gag order that we couldn't talk to city council, we couldn't talk to city staff, we couldn't talk to anybody in the evaluation committee. We couldn't ask questions. Since they never asked any questions from us, if you read a 200-page document about something that it's not your regular business, the trash business, the landfill business, you have to have lots of questions. And so our frustration was, if it's all evaluated evenly and fairly, and we lose or win, we'll shake your hand and go home. But when those things are set aside, and at the same time, we uncovered this overbilling, and the reason how we
All
uncovered
right,
this.
let's stop right there. So this no lobby clause prevented you from speaking about the trash contract. It supposedly kept Republic from speaking about the trash contract to either city staff or city council members.
Well, they could talk to the people who they were negotiating with, because they're obviously negotiating.
Could city councilmen play golf with Republic officials? I had to throw that one in. So.
I don't think by the letter of the law they could. I don't know if they did or not.
So you bid other municipal contracts. How many of them have this, throw the other guy out, have a no lobby clause where no one can speak, and secretly negotiate this contract?
Well, I wouldn't say they secretly negotiated. Everyone knew they were negotiating, but it's not unusual to have a no lobbying clause. Most cities don't, but some cities actually.
So you say most cities don't?
Most cities don't, but some do. The larger ones, it'll be more commonplace.
So larger ones will have a no lobby?
It'll be more commonplace to have a no lobby.
So like Austin would be.
Austin has no lobby.
So, and it's not a law, it's just an agreement between parties that you would agree.
And really, I say lobby, that's what most people think. It's really a no contact, because there's no really lobbying, it's just a no contact.
Do you feel like the no contact clause in the rules were there to prevent anyone from having any scrutiny over what was going on?
I don't know what the intent of it is, but where it's unusual here is typically when we're involved in an RFP process, you don't find things out along the way that people at the city need to know about who are making decisions, long-term decisions for the city. And when you find things out and you express it and they don't want to talk to you or don't have any questions, it's very awkward.
So one of the things that was found out along the way was on Bob Gregory, your CEO's cover letter on the RFP. And that's when he explained that the Republic, he alleged that Republic had been overcharging commercial businesses for its environmental recovery fee and fuel charges for 10, 12, 14 years.
Yeah, so what we did is when we were preparing for the RFP, we went to talk to commercial businesses to see, how do you like the service? How is it? How is it billed? Let me see your bill, let me see your container. Ask questions that would help us in our process. And we saw these fees that didn't seem to be authorized. We did a lot of research and found that, to our knowledge, they weren't authorized. And after we had turned our bid in, if I'm correct on the date, I might be wrong, but I'm pretty sure it was after we turned it in, Mr. Gregory told the council and said, hey, we found this. They're overcharges. So going back to the process, think about this. In just about every city we service, if it was uncovered that there were problems on how your current contractor operated your facility, and then you found that they were overbilling people for many years, most cities would just disqualify that contractor and say, we can't do business with these people, or we certainly can't do it until we get it all cleared up. But that's not what happened here. Some of it is related to the no contact problem.
But the allegation I've heard, or the answer to that, is TDS does the same thing in markets all over Texas.
I don't know what you mean by do the same thing.
You have extra fees and charges. You charge the same environmental fee in Sealy, Texas, for example.
Well, since you brought it up, I'll be happy to talk to it. If you go to Republic's website and if you Google Republic Services Environmental Fee and read it, it's very interesting because it says that the environmental fee is not related to any direct or indirect cost to service your account. It also says that the environmental fees they collect are not sent to any governmental or environmental agency, and that they are their fees and they are to help them stay compliant in the environmental laws and
You're
to
saying their fees, they're the city, the municipal?
no, Republic's.
Oh, you're talking about on Republic's website.
And if you read the last part, it says it's designed and to achieve an acceptable operating margin. So,
and they also brag about the environmental recovery fees in their 10Q. I've
well,
seen that.
it's a great thing for the 10Q, because if you think about a $12 billion company that's charging 11% environmental fees, that's a lot.
Yeah.
And then you read that none of it's going to any regulatory agency. So my point is, we've never charged an environmental fee. We won't charge an environmental fee because it's a made-up fee. It's not required, but it's not a tax, it's not a pass-through, it's not a city franchise fee. We tell people that we win environmental awards, we don't charge environmental fees.
So was it TDS that said that these fees could amount to $10 million?
It was,
Okay. So
based on our calculations, and the way we were able to calculate it, we had just received the information in the RFP, and this was on commercial business only, just to be clear, because the city bills residential, so the city wouldn't bill anything that's not on the city fee, but it's very typical for the contractor to bill commercial. The reason is, on a residential bill, everybody's bill is exactly the same. In commercial, this restaurant may have 6 days a week pickup, and a printer may have 1 day of pickup on a smaller, so all the fees are different. And then the contractor just pays the city. So this was a separate line item, and it was not authorized the way we could tell. But what I was going to say is, we had a list of in the bid process, every container that was there and how many were there. And we knew what the rates were. So it was pretty easy to calculate the total amount of volume based on the RFP information, and back into those numbers. And they're estimates. We can't say for sure.
But what they will say now, the other side of this is, well, Republic is already paid. They've already paid it back. They agreed. We made San Angelo Live made such a big stink about it. I have to plug us a little bit.
I can't believe you.
They've already paid it back. Republic voluntarily, out of the kindness of their heart, paid those environmental recovery fees back. Everyone got a check. Everyone's happy.
Well, I would say two-part answer. So voluntarily, we were the ones that found it, brought it to council, and it was not the next day. It was quite a long time later to where there was an announcement they were going to pay it back. I would like to know, and I'm not going to answer your question with an answer, I'm going to answer with a question. Is there a document that's on the city's website, or that the city has, that shows and proves everyone who was paid back? Because I haven't found one, I haven't seen one. I haven't put in a public information request, but it's easy to say I paid you back. Maybe they did, maybe they didn't. But I'll give you an example. I was at an apartment meeting.
This is an apartment in San Angelo?
Apartment association meeting in San Angelo, where the regional manager for Republic was speaking. And I was sitting next to a lady who managed an apartment complex. And when they said, hey, we're going to send these checks back, she said, oh my God, I don't know what to do. And I said, what do you mean? And she said, well, we've only been managing this apartment complex for a year. If they send me a check for 10 or 12 or 14 years, and I put it in the bank, I'm going to go to jail. Somebody's going to sue me. Do I have to research every company? I don't know what to do.
But there's been no audit, there's been no official reporting that you know of
Has anyone heard of an audit?
I just got a press release from Republic saying they're going to pay it back. That's all I got. So,
well, what would happen? I'll finish. What would happen if there was a construction company 8 years ago that's out of state that did work?
yeah.
Maybe they're out of business. What happens to that money? What if somebody owned a company 10 years ago and they died? Where does that money go? How do we know that the checks were actually cashed? Maybe they were, but if there's not a document that shows it, it's hard to say that
we have about 10 minutes left, and before I open it up for questions, if there are any, I want to talk about what's going on right now with the trash contract. And I kind of teased a little bit today in the email that we send out to everyone. I talked about the elephant in the room. So what's happening right now, just to fill everyone in if you don't know, is that the city is trying to negotiate with Republic to trade 26 days of recyclable pickup for Republic giving us 8 additional days of bulk pickup. Now, when I guess I said this morning, I said if you understand math, you know that 8 is less than 26, so they're probably getting a pretty good deal on value exchange. Republic's getting a better deal. But they've been having forums on this, and it's all these problems perk up, and they say, well, the city, and someone said like yesterday, well, if we're renegotiating the terms of the service, we can renegotiate the contract, so why don't we fix some of these problems and go forward there? But Shane Kelton said you can't renegotiate the contract. And I'm going to tell you why I think that he says that is because the terms of the contract are that Republic gave the city darn near $10, $15 million up front. I mean, I've got it here, and this will be in the show notes underneath the video, but they gave them a one-time payment to the city of $3.6 million. They purchased one of the cells in the landfill for $1.3 million. They funded this post-closure count that we were talking about earlier to the tune of $4.8 million. They installed a gas detection system that the TCEQ required for $670,000. And then they're giving the city right now $6.3 million total over the length of the 10-year contract and lease payments. My calculations, of course, this is Aggie math, but it's $16.6 million. And a lot of that was up front. I mean, you're 3.6, you're 1.3. So you're looking at, $8, $9 million up front, and then you're going to lose these lease payments. So this right here made the City of San Angelo Solid Waste Fund whole again. And now if we go back and renegotiate the contract, what, are they going to ask for a refund?
Well, you could. I'll tell you what, this is to me the most fascinating part of this. And all this information, we have the documentation on our website. We put in public information for it because it leads to those numbers. So we have our RFP that we released very early. We have the Republic contract on our website, and we have Republic's RFP, their response. So if you go in to buy a car and they say the car is $30,000, there's probably not one person in this room that's going to offer them $33,000. But the mayor said they had a great negotiating team. They were negotiating. They had to keep all this silent because they were negotiating a great deal. Well, if you look at the RFP that Republic put in, they offered a certain amount of money to the city up front, and they had rates. If you look at the contract...
Well, I'll just tell you right now, instead of offering $3.6 million to the city, they offered a one-time payment to the city of $1 million.
But the total of all years together...
It was $7.8 million.
The total of everything together, my math that our company's put together is in this negotiation, the city got $8.5 million more in the contract than what was offered by Republic, which sounds like great negotiation. Now, if the rates all stayed the same, that would be a great negotiating team. But what they didn't say, and all you have to do is look at the rates in the RFP and the contract, is that over the 10-year process of the 10-year contract, not 20, but the 10-year initial term of the contract, according to our calculations, they allowed Republic to raise the fees for residential and commercial by $20 million. They bid $11 and some change. It's about $11.50 for residential pickup, but the contract says it's about $14.50. I'm off by a few cents. I think it was $2.90 difference. So,
and that's per home, and that's times 30,000 or so.
We multiply by the number of homes and 12 months a year and 10 years. So the negotiations, what happened is the city got more money. They got, according to our calculations, $8.5 million more. But Republic got over the term of the contract, not from the city, but from the folks, $20 million more, which means Republic netted $11.5 million. So that's why I think that people are at the forum last night and the forum 2 months ago, because the mayor said this is a great deal for the city. Well, it is a great deal for the city. They got a lot of money up front. Republic says it's a great deal, but the citizens are saying, hey, nobody told me that the commercial rates are going up over 70%. There was never a slide presented of that.
So you say the commercial rates went up over 70%. Some of our reporting, I have a customer of mine, Chicken Express, said that his, and of course, if you're a chicken restaurant, you've got to deal with the grease, and I mean, they got a mess, right?
Yeah.
The chicken restaurant has a lot of mess. He said he went up 94%. He says, what do I do? Do I just not hire another person to pay for the increase?
So you were at every one of the council meetings.
Right.
I was at most of them. My staff was at, someone was at all of them. I remember them saying the residential rates are gonna go up about $2, you're gonna get a cart, you're gonna get more service. There was never a slide that I remember seeing that said, and oh, by the way, the commercial rates are going up 70+%. And when I was at this department meeting, people were very angry. And it was said, and I've got a transcript of the meeting, that, you know, the residential rates were a little bit lower because the commercial rates were a little higher and they helped offset it. And that's what's been said. Well, that's not true, because if you look at the RFP rates of the bid that was offered for the residential rates, the contract rates are higher than what was bid, and the commercial rates are higher.
All right, so we're running up against our hard stop, but looking forward, you know, because we already know where we came from. What can we do now? Are there any options for San Angelo?
Absolutely. Well, first of all, on the survey was sent out, it said, are you willing to pay more?
And this is the survey that Shane Kelton had at the forum last night. This is the survey that they're sending out to all the trash customers.
Right, and it's a horrible question, because the real question from what the services have been proposed is, are you willing to pay more for less service? Because your math is correct. Now, there's some additional landfill costs, but I will tell you that when we put in our bid, and you can see it, you can see a copy of our bid, we didn't think that the mix that the city was asking for was the best mix. We bid on it, but we also gave them an alternative, which was every other week recycling.
Which is what they're trying to go to now.
Which is what they're trying to do now. And if you calculate the exact service on our bid, I'm not comparing our rates to Republic's, I'm comparing our bid of the two services, the service you have now versus the service being proposed. Our bid was 13% less because it's less service.
And were your commercial rates as high?
Our commercial rates were lower, and that was confirmed by the mayor in one of his comments.
So they've already paid this $6 to $8 million that Republic has to the city. How are we going to, if we negotiate the contract, if someone finally agrees in city government that we can renegotiate the contract, how do we do that? How do we do that? How does the city get out of this?
Well, there's numbers of things in a contract, and I'm not an attorney and can't advise it there, but there's a termination clauses in the contract. There's areas to negotiate. The city can negotiate and say, hey, we want to change some things. We want to open up commercial markets. We want to have more competition. There's all types of things you can do in a negotiation between two parties to solve a problem. It happens all the time.
So to give a glimpse into, like if we were to have competition in the commercial markets, for example, which to me, one of the things you're talking about the apartment owners, man, I'm starting to sound like Sean Hannity here. To me, what I'm thinking is...
Don't make me Megan Kelly.
I'm thinking that the apartment owners are already under the threat of their property tax, you know, the gross amount they pay in taxes, the property taxes going up, and then you have their trash going up. And then on the other side, you have a town that has very few professional level jobs that pay $70, $80, $90, $150,000, and they're living in apartments. And these are the guys who can least afford to pay rent. And we're putting stress on the providers that provide those things with these inflated, or I guess higher than normal commercial trash rates. So looking into the temporary roll-off, which you won a lawsuit, right? TDS won a lawsuit to be able to do that. Were you able to drive down the temporary roll-off rates?
We think so, and I think our customers think so, because we're not bound by a contracted rate, so it's a market rate.
So just to give you an idea, temporary roll-off are these large bins you see in front of construction sites, where they throw away all their sheetrock and what have you. So the state of Texas has some laws. Some people will claim that they're loopholes, but everyone uses them. It says that you can't give exclusivity to temporary roll-off trash pickup, right? And so you continue to compete in that arena inside the city limits.
Yeah, we believe it's a state law. We believe it's very clear. In all the communities we have, all the haulers abide by that. We have that in every community I'm aware of. And Republic initiated a lawsuit, which we won at the trial level, and now it's going to the next level.
So it's up at the Fifth Court of Appeals. But you do feel that that did maintain or lower the cost for contractors building?
Absolutely, and let me share this, and I have this sheet in one of the packets. Commercial rates are a little harder to compare because there's not one, so I picked one size, a 3-yard container picked up twice a week, and I've got Abilene, Odessa, Midland, Brady, and San Angelo. Abilene's rate's $56, Odessa's $77, Midland's $62, Brady's $54, San Angelo's $158. So San Angelo's commercial rates for that size are triple Abilene, more than double Odessa, more than double Midland, and triple Brady.
Well,
So I think that my answer to you is yes, if you opened up the commercial market, I would think
so
that
what you're
rates
saying,
would dramatically come down.
You're saying is our commercial rates are about 70 to probably double what they are in comparable cities. 70% higher to double.
To double the triple in some cases from these cities that we compare.
Okay, so we're done with the general discussion. I hope we haven't lost everyone, but if there are any questions from the audience, I will repeat them because we don't have we're not, big audio visual. We don't have the microphone in the audience, but I'll repeat the question and we'll try to answer it. Anyone have a question? Go ahead, sir.
Okay, on the small business part, a lot of small business got really hurt by this, especially small restaurants. At the time, meat was high, then they almost took over our trash. But when I kept trying to call Republic, call my counselors, they don't work for this. And by the way, thank you for trying getting some of our money back, but they got it back right away. By doubling us on this. But my question is that every time I call Republic, I would say I want a itemized statement, everything for the years. And my parents, they've had the restaurant for almost 26 years, and they could never come up with no comment. They could maybe either their accountants didn't know nothing, or they were just dumb. So my question basically is that, I checked the Abilene rates. I told my councilman what the rates were, what was going on, and it just one ear after the other. And a lot of small business got affected by this. I've talked to a lot of small business every day in my job because I got another supply company, but also with my folks' restaurant. Everybody was like, man, how can we run a restaurant? Meat's going up. Everything, property tax going up. It would just make it tough to make the business. And the oil field wasn't really impacting us other than basically the commercials. Unless you had sold beer.
So do you have a question, a specific question?
That was just basically just what on the part of the small business on the rates that y'all were. We do a six yard container, and I think we're paying almost 110 or 115. I quit.
Is it so? This is Fernandez restaurant that you're paying 115, 120?
No, we're at Maggie's restaurant.
What is it?
We're at Maggie's restaurant.
At Maggie's restaurant. And how much are you paying right now for trash?
It's about 100 something. Before then, it was like 70 something.
So it's gone from 70 something to 110, 120.
Yeah, with taxes and everything, it was about with taxes 60 something, 70, and it almost 8%.
Well, that all goes back to competition.
Yeah, well, here's my question. So, did you get any kind of notification prior to it going up, or was the first time you found out about it when you got your bill?
No, when we got the bill too, but when we were kind of hearing what was going with the council, I told my father and said, "Look, we're fixing to get punched in the face. We're going to have to cut something else. Electricity's high, everything, trash is high, meat's high.
Meat's high, the oil field's down.
The oil field was supposed to help out a little bit, and it did, but not very much. But it's hard to make a profit when you're taking away more money from us just to sell more plates, just to make a profit or break even. And
I think the key to what you had mentioned before is, do we have the power as a citizen to make a change? Well, that's what government's all about. We live in a democracy. I mean, people enter into contracts all the time. If people are upset about what the city has entered into on their behalf, you have the ability to go say, hey, we want to change the deal, whether that includes our company or whether you stay with Republic. But what I'm sharing with you is the first time we've been able to have a discussion. The documents are out there, but I have a transcript of when Mayor Morrison gave a presentation, I believe it was at the Rotary Club, and he was asked, I hear the commercial rates are going up 70%, and he said, no, that's not the accurate number. It's not anything like that. It's a transcript. Well, in fact, it was. So I think if you want to make a change, people have to band together and go to the government and say, hey, this is not right. I want to change. I want to renegotiate something.
And at the time we tried to do this, pretty much it was too late. That kind of just, I would have known this about the trash. It went for Sandra Live, social media. Because, you know, Charter Farm said, oh, it was in the paper, you need to look at it. Where? You know, they really didn't give us much notice. They kind of just let it in, and we just got surprised. That's basically what a lot of small businesses got.
Well, you got surprised, but the negotiations went on how long? 3 months?
Well, they started on April Fool's Day, I guess, and they approved the first reading of the contract like in July 7th or July 14th.
So it wasn't a big secret. People who were negotiating knew about it. And they negotiated the prices higher than what was bid. The price you're paying now is more than was bid in the bid.
And at the time, we weren't hearing nothing before we got hit. I just kind of knew it just didn't. It wasn't mixing well. You could tell the way that the councilors ran the meetings. They weren't really listening to, like, most councilmen weren't listening to the constituents. At least my councilman wasn't.
And who was your councilman?
Silvas at the time.
Johnny Silvas? Okay.
And he had Shane Kelton call me, and I just pretty much laughed in Shane Kelton's face. It's like, man, you're just an scapegoat.
Well, most of the time you hear on the movies on TV, follow the money, follow the trail of the money. So what I'm suggesting, and I don't know, I'm just looking at the numbers, if the city got a lot more money and your bill went up, maybe there's a connection in the negotiation, since the price for public bid was lower than what you're paying now and what's in the contract.
Because I know y'all were lower, because I know in the county area where my sister lives, I said, well, mine went up, and
I don't think that's correct. I don't think they're necessarily that much lower. I think they were comparable.
They were a little lower.
In my opinion, what happened was, and this is my opinion, what happened with the whole deal. The pain point was with Marty Self, Councilman Marty Self, Dwayne Morrison, the mayor, and with Johnny Silvas. Their pain point was they didn't want to see the residential rates get up to like $18, $19, $20 like they were in Abilene, because a lot of their constituencies are, you know, they didn't live in Santa Rita. They weren't rich. But at the same time, they had the I guess the push from the public to add recycling, which costs more money. I mean, you can say we can make money with recycling, but you have to do additional truck runs, you got to do the sorting. It costs more money to do curbside recycling. So they wanted to add the curbside recycling without dramatically impacting the lower incomes of San Angelo. And so what they did a couple of things in this contract. First thing they did was they got a big pile of cash out of the Republic so they could make their solid waste fund, which was practically zero, I guess, when they started this process.
It was negative $2 million. I'm not sure what that, I've never had a fund that's
Okay,
negative $2 million. I'm not
which
sure what that
means that
means.
your general fund was paying into the solid waste enterprise fund. The second thing they did was they got curbside recycling, so that people that wanted the recycling, they got it. And the last thing they did by jacking up those rates on the commercial was they were able to get keep the price. The initial price, it's going to go up 2.9% every year. So they got the initial price within the zone where it doesn't look like it's that big of a deal.
Well, I'm going to take umbrage with one thing you said, because that's what the city has said. But the price that Republic put on their RFP was $11.54, including the recycling. So why would they make an argument that, boy, we have to raise these commercial rates, or the price may be $20 when they actually bid $11.54?
I would make the argument that the commercial rates were already, in the initial bid, were already too high. And then when they went back and they renegotiated this thing up from $7.8 million upfront fees to $16.6 million, they just increased everything. So
That's what it looks like.
I'm making my argument that the commercial businesses, the Chamber of Commerce crowd, financed the lower curbside recycling and trash pickup.
Well, my thought on it is that the folks paid a higher bill, and Republic benefited, and the city benefited, and the people that got squashed were the folks, whether it's residential or commercial.
Or small business owner like
Or small business.
And I know for a fact, on the county part, where y'all were doing TDS and Republic, my sister was like, hey, my bill just went up, just call TDS. All right, a lot cheaper, not much, but it was different. But she called Republic to pick up their dumpster. And goes, well, what did TDS say? Well, we're gonna get cheaper, we'll match it.
So what
Why
you're
would they
saying,
match it so
what you're
quick?
saying is in the county, where there's competition, the prices are dropping.
Yeah.
That's what you're saying.
Yeah, and then when she said, okay, go ahead and pick up my dumpster, and we're gonna get TDS, we're probably, wait, we'll just match TDS price right now. That was just so simple. That's called.
So who won in that deal? The customer won, the consumer
customer
won.
won.
That's called free enterprise.
Yeah, and that's called free enterprise. No monopoly. I would love to sell medical supplies to everybody, and you would love to sell advertisement to everybody, and nobody else to have no competition. We would love that.
I want exclusivity on advertising. Anyway, Rick Froman from Texas Disposal Systems. I'm Joe Hyde with San Angelo Alive. Thank y'all for coming. Y'all can go ahead and applaud.
Thank you very much. Was that exciting enough about trash? Thank you for coming and listening.
But I had a lot of people that, you know, I got so much info that everybody gives me input on. And we just have to
Joe, turn that
Lane
off.
and I are going to make our trash form, which is I'll try to make it have to wear a mirror. Well, if you can get some business, you know, I went to JC as a hospital. Yeah. And I've been talking to my local.
It's okay.
Well, I'm talking about it.